So we're ready to go. You got YouTube going? Yep.
They're good.
All right. Okay, so I will call advisory committee meeting at 6:34 on November 12th. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general law, chapter 30A, section 18, and the governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Southborough Advisory Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and a requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Southborough's website at www.southboroughtown.com. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch or participate in the meeting may do so in the following manner by finding the meeting at www.southboroughtown.com/remote meetings. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on Southborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Reading this makes one know how flight attendants feel. Okay. So Andrew, do you want to take over as far as the approval of the 2 sets of minutes?
So I circulated on Sunday or Monday drafts of the September meeting we had and the October meeting we had. So I am welcome to hear any comments that people had on them.
They look good to me.
On the 1021 one,
Yes.
I just noticed line 16 on the second page.
Okay.
Haggerty's name is ERTY. It should be ARTY.
Okay.
That's an easy fix.
On the October 21 meeting minutes,
Yep.
I didn't see any references to the documents that we used during the meeting,
Okay.
which, at least by recollection in reading the minutes, would have been the 2 sets of draft minutes, the draft letter that I sent, and then Kathy had a memo of some sort that she was walking through on the FY22 budget.
2 drafts of set minutes, Kathy's memo, and then your draft letters.
Yeah. I think if you go back to Kathy's email that she sent before the meeting, that should hopefully
Okay.
have everything.
I can include those. Yeah.
Yeah. But they have to be referenced in the minutes too, is I guess what I'm saying.
Andrew, I will save it. I just pulled the document up. I'll save it as a PDF and send it to you so you can attach it.
Yeah, you send them as an attachment, but like when we do the capital planning ones, we say documents referenced, so-and-so document, and then when they add it as a.
Do you see Claire's chat?
Did we see Claire's what,
Yeah.
Tim?
Chat.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We'll do that.
And then I just saw one.
Okay. Claire, you've got the one that the memo I wrote to? Okay.
And I think we need to, Kathy, we had the same issue on the subcommittee you and I are on. I think we need to list out roll call votes, even if they are, at least acknowledge that it was a roll call vote.
So Andrew, Jason believes, I'm not sure I agree that you got to do this. I mean, if you got a unanimous vote, you got a unanimous vote, but
Yeah. So like
the ones that
votes-
aren't unanimous, you should list who voted against it or abstained.
So I like 17. There's an example where you can see 6-0-1 JM abstains, right? So that lets you know who voted how.
Yeah, I was just saying, in general, you have to list that you at least took a roll call vote, which I don't see here.
So you just want the words roll call vote taken.
Yeah, I mean, I've been told you're supposed to have everyone, but I'm certainly in favor of voting for the minutes, at least if we denote roll call, because that aligns with what you're supposed to do in a remote meeting, which we obviously did it, so.
Okay, so Andrew, will you just add roll call vote when we took a vote? And I think we're fine. Okay, someone will make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
So moved.
And now here, that motion is for the October minutes, or there are any other comments for the September minutes?
Let's do the October ones first because we just reviewed those ones. and then-
Okay,
Okay, so Jason's made a motion to approve the October 21st minutes.
With the aforementioned edits.
Second.
You seconded? All in favor? Cook, aye. Dennington,
aye.
Martell,
Aye.
sorry, Jason,
Malinowski, aye.
Beth,
Aye.
Rooney.
Rooney, aye.
So that is 6-0. Because Judy's not here. Okay, September 23rd. So no changes? Okay. Motion to approve.
I move that we approve these September minutes.
June 23rd. Second,
Second.
all in favor? Cook, aye. Dennington,
Aye.
Malinowski,
Aye.
Martell,
Aye.
Beth,
Aye.
Rooney,
Aye.
6-0 again. All right. So we're all caught up, which is great. Okay, chairman's update. This is going to be a fairly short meeting, guys, so I can tell you that up front. Okay, a couple of, we don't normally start out with this, but these are pretty big changes, especially one of them. So as everyone probably has heard, our director of IT, Tom LaFlamme, has resigned effective November 27th. He's going to work in Tinsboro, which is very close to where he lives. So he's going to get rid of a commute by doing this. He's here if anyone wants to talk to him. It's my understanding that there has not been no one's been identified to replace him yet, although the process is ongoing. The only person that is still, the only other person we have that works on a department right now is the 8-hour part-time person he hired for this year. He has not hired the second person to fill out the 19-hour position that got approved. So, so he's here if anybody wants to ask him a question. I'm not sure what we should do tonight.
So I met with Tom a week ago, 2 weeks ago. We had a good conversation. And I'm not certain what topics you want to talk about tonight, Kathy, whether it's budget or security or transition or, but one thing I would like to do if he's interested, and not to put you on the spot, Tom, I certainly would like Tom to have an opportunity to give us as a town a sense of lessons learned officially. So maybe this isn't the best place for it.
I'm sorry, I missed part of that as I was being brought over. So,
there's nobody in the town who was better placed over the last several years to kind of give us a summary on what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong and what we really need to do moving forward. And as I said, I don't know if this is the forum in which to do it. However, I do think it's important that your opinion, whether it's documented and put in a report to the selectmen or advisory or what have you, I do think that your opinion is very important to get, though, because I don't think we're going to improve unless we have a certain level of transparency. So again, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. But it's something I'd like to, we don't have to discuss it tonight, but I would like to get a sense of if it can be discussed somewhere, somehow.
I don't think this is necessarily a forum to do that in. I could certainly share some thoughts separately, but and I am seeking to talk to personnel board as well about some of the thoughts that I was going to raise to them around the staffing survey and things like that. So I'm certainly open to conversation.
So I think having it with the personnel board makes a lot of sense. Then Kathy, my question is, what would the next step be from that point?
And I don't know the answer to that, Tim. We don't have much time. I don't know that there's really time to rethink the whole structure as far as what we should do going forward. I don't know where MTC is, if they're involved in this, what their thoughts are. So I put this out there tonight in case someone has an idea. I mean, we don't have any direct authority in this, but I am concerned that we don't have someone to replace Tom yet. It's already November 12th. You got Thanksgiving coming up. And if we end up on November 27th without someone hired, then what's the backup plan here? That's what I'm most concerned about, is that we're going to end up not having the chance to replace Tom, if that's what the plan is, which I think it is, and then end up on November 27th with a person who works 8 hours a week.
I will say there are some ongoing conversations that, again, I don't want to step on toes and really let it out at this point, but there are some ongoing conversations about how to proceed in the short term and or long term, as well as the fact that I am definitely going to be available for reasonable assistance after the fact. The new community is open to that, in part because they're finding themselves in the same exact boat. In fact, they have been without an IT director for a few days now, so they're without for a couple more weeks.
Who is without one, Tom? I didn't hear who you said it was.
My new community.
Okay, so they're in the same boat we are about to maybe be in then. Okay.
Yep, so they're very understanding of the situation and open to me providing, again, reasonable assistance. And I am identifying key tasks that other staff can take on, or at least they know who to call if there's an issue. So.
Your assistant that works 8 hours, does that person work one day a week? Is that what the 8 hours is?
He does mostly after hours, but I have spoken with him that there is the potential. He doesn't want to commit to being able to respond during the day because he is working a full-time job, and he doesn't want to have a conflict that, have an expectation. And I completely understand. And I appreciate his honesty on that response, that he doesn't want to set himself up to be failing at, if someone sends an email and he gets back to it, that's great. If not, it's because he has something going on at his full-time job. So.
All right, anybody else as far as a question for Tom?
Tom, do we still have that agreement with that consulting company?
It is not in place, and in part because they weren't adding any value really. They would charge to come out for 8 hours to update their documentation and not do anything beyond that. And it was just it wasn't worth having them come out and having me find small things for them to do with the desktop support. The amount we were paying them per hour to be out, it didn't make any sense at that time. So they'd probably be open to revisiting, but again, there's some other discussions going on that I think we hope to have some resolution in the coming days.
Okay. Thanks, Tom. And speaking for myself, and I've been speaking for others, we appreciate what you've done with this town, and you've been a pleasure to work with. And we wish you well in your new position.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
So the other personnel matter, Carol Ostrich, who has been the town receptionist for a while at the town hall, is going to retire at the end of this month. She had originally intended to retire at the end of the fiscal year, but has elected to leave a few months early. So that position is going to be open also. All right, so that's
Is that a, never mind. I was gonna say, is that a position we need to fill?
let's talk about that later once we get into the budget discussion. We talked about that a lot last year, Andrew, as far as maybe not needing to fill that position. So it's certainly going to be a subject to be talked about as we get into the details of the budget.
Yep. Okay.
You may recall that one of the things that we wanted to do this year is start monitoring the current year expenditures compared to the budget. So I got the first report only a couple hours ago, so I haven't had a chance to look at it. Later on tonight, we're going to talk about where we're going to start putting documents so that everybody can get to them so they know where everything is. I'll put that document there too. So I've got the first report that is going to let us take a look at where things stand year to date. So I'll get that posted. The EDC Downtown Initiative zoning article is coming to a head. The board of selectmen are about to take it up. They have solicited comments. That period is closed as far as comments go, at least for now. I had intended that we will look at it once it is ready for prime time. They've gone through it. They've made the modifications. Others have looked at it. That whose bailiwick this really is. And then we would then take a look at it. Andrew Dennington, would you be willing to be in charge of this one as far as making sure you keep up with what's going on and understand it so that you can be the explainer in chief for us for this one?
Yes, and I have been aware of the process that's going forward, and unfortunately, I haven't been able to devote as much time to it as I would have liked so far. But overall, it looks like the format that the proposal is in is good, and the there's a spreadsheet which has been circulated which captures all of the different comments that people have made, and there's been a lot of comments. So we'll see where it goes next.
This is premature, but does it look like it is in better shape now than it was the last time we took a look?
Yes, much better, much better.
Good. Well, that's encouraging. Okay, I mean, you may even want to attend the meetings where they're discussing this so you really see what's going on. Okay. Next topic is COVID reimbursement. So the reimbursement request has been submitted both for the amounts that are available under the CARES Act and also from FEMA. It looks like they have requested about $170,000. However, that includes a piece that is requested from FEMA, and you don't give it 75% of that. So even if we got the whole thing approved, we're not going to get back $170,000. So maybe 145, 150, but it's all submitted.
Kathy, is that something you had an opportunity to review before it was submitted?
No, the town accountant did this herself and apparently spent quite a bit of time on it. The new town accountant, Carla McAuliffe. So I didn't see it. I kept asking about it, but they did it within the accounting department and submitted it. So the answer is no. So I have no opinion on whether they got everything they could or not.
So how do we dive into that more, Kathy?
Excuse me?
How do we dive into that more? I mean, your window's closing pretty quickly here, unless Congress does something.
So Jason, if we really want to dive into this, we would really have to do some type of audit of the expenses, which would take some time. We could do it, but it would take some time to truly go through the departments we think have relevant expenses, which would be several, and make sure. I mean, we could also, as part of that, we would make sure we could talk to Carla and see what they did to identify them. I've been told she spent about 75% of her time for the first couple months on this, so there's definitely been time spent. But I definitely don't have assurance that they've picked up everything they possibly could.
I guess I'm saying in fairness to Carla, it doesn't matter how good you are at your job if you put the weight of that. I mean, it's a $900,000 item potentially, right? You know, between us and the schools for the town of Southborough over the 9-month period. I just, as long as we're comfortable with the review procedures that were put in place and that someone looked at, I know they didn't do an audit, right? But, you know, I want to be fair to Carla that, like, did she have the right level of support? Not
Yeah,
saying she didn't.
Jason or Kathy, do you, either of you know if that amount is comparable to our neighbors or where it fits in the grand scheme of requests for reimbursement? Seems low to me. That's why I'm asking the question.
I don't know that either, John. I can say, the only thing I can say that is even meaningful or informative is that it's more than what they thought it was going to be when they were throwing out a rough number. But I'm not sure that means anything either. Jason, where did you get your $900,000 number?
That's what was allocated by the state. That's the maximum reimbursement that we can apply for. Town of Southborough. It's a public number.
So we did less than 2/9 of that as far as what we applied for.
The one comparable I have were very low, but I also don't know if the other comparable I have was just very aggressive, right? So I'm not advocating that one is right and one is wrong. I'm just, the one comparable I have is we're not, you know, if you're spending 2/9 of what was allocated. I do know it came up in BOS that the schools are going to use 100,000, I think, for COVID testing. So that'll take a good chunk of that, but that's still a fraction compared to the total amount that is potentially out there.
Okay, Andrew, Beth, would you be willing to work with me to try to dig into this a little bit further? And we'll have to go quick because there's a very small time to get this done and see, at least understand the process and make sure that we're okay with the process. And then from there, see if there's anything else to be done. I mean, 174 sounds light to me, just as a matter. Jason, the other comparable you have is the town that you work with?
I've seen that in public BOS packets, but I actually was thinking of another town. But yeah, we're low compared to that one too, which is half the population
All right,
in a
so
regional school district.
sounds like the committee thinks we should dig into this further. So Andrew P.
Yep.
Okay, so
Yeah,
we'll
I don't know if that also includes that the program that selectmen were working on for rent relief.
25,000.
So we'll talk tomorrow, Andrew.
Yep.
Thank you, John. So the legislature has finally taken up the fiscal year 21 budget. They have released a new cherry sheet that reflects what their thinking is right now, and it will give us a grand total of $74 more. So the good news is it's not going down, but we're not going to get, they're going to add some money to it, it looks like they typically do. They're going to take some more money out of the rainy day fund, it looks like, than Baker did, but it's not going to help us. But at least it's not going down. So what we've got in the budget for fiscal 21 is a good number. So that seems to be winding itself up. And then we'll see what they do in January for fiscal year 22. All right, any questions about anything that we just discussed? Okay, so the next topic is continue our discussion on cybersecurity, IT risk, et cetera. So I would think that the moral of the story is, you know, we were worried last year that we had basically all of our everything was embedded in Tom LaFlamme, and this is come home to roost. So I think we've got an issue here. I hope that there's a lot going on behind the scenes. I will try to find out what's going on. Talk to Mark Purple. But you know, 2 weeks is going to come and go pretty fast. And then, of course, the person who starts is going to be brand new and have to get up to speed with no one to really train him. So I'm concerned. I'm not sure what Tim thinks.
We're in a far worse shape than we were last spring when we originally wrote the risk document.
because of Tom leaving and because of the world we're in, or?
Because of Tom leaving, because of the fact that there's no backup, there's really no staff, there's no replacement, how we're going to find a competent person who could step in without Tom to train them. I mean, it's just, Kathy, I'm not going to continue talking.
All right.
That's the level. That's the level of how this has been managed.
All right. Anybody else want to make a comment? I'm not sure what else we can do tonight. It's a problem. So the one thing we did find out since the last meeting, we do have cyber insurance on our liability policy. It's about $1 million limit per year on various things that could happen. So there is some insurance there if we needed to tap into it. But, who knows whether it would be enough or not if something disastrous happened. But not to belabor this is exactly what our concern was, that all of our eggs were in one basket, that we were relying solely on one person. We talked about what would happen if Tom got sick, whatever, and here we are. Alrighty.
Kathy, I know you got a lot going on, but just that raises one issue, which is the presentation of the MIS budget for this year. Who's going to do that? Because that's where you can make some improvements, right? Is to address it there.
Well, if you had time, and Tim, chime in here. If you had time, you could rethink the whole structure and decide what we really should end up with. But we don't have time for that. We're going to have to hire someone to step in. We can't be without an IT person. Whether we hire a company to consult and take over like we used to have, or we've got time to find someone, I don't know. So maybe they're further along down the path than what they seem to be.
Kathy, why don't we just invite Mark to the next meeting and have him? I mean, Tom clearly just alluded to something. He said there's conversations. He didn't want to step on anyone's toes. Like, let's read between the lines here. Like, just have him come and maybe, I just don't want to hypothesize. I don't think we should hypothesize here of what they are or aren't doing, but clearly not hopefully sitting and doing nothing. And maybe you need redundancy, right? Or if we want Tim to go have a conversation directly on that topic, but I would think those are your two options.
Yeah, and not to add any more gas on this, we're approaching the holiday season, and in terms of hiring, it's going to be a bit more limited, I would suspect.
Yeah. So he leaves Friday after Thanksgiving, and then Monday, and no one's there. So, we don't have the ability or the expertise overall to sit here and design what we would recommend to the town as far as the structure goes. MTC does. So I'm hoping. So I think we probably should invite not only Mark, but the chair of MTC to the meeting too. Anybody disagree?
Tom, in your experience, are there any third party?
Tom isn't here anymore.
Oh, it's not anymore. I was going to say,
He had to go do something, so he was.
No worries. Are there any municipal third party consulting agencies that do like a staffing, plan kind of thing? Like I've seen them do for like fire departments, police departments to look at your, kind of thing.
It costs.
I know it costs, but this might be the opportunity to do that.
I mean, we have a budget that is 1.5 people. We have, and the salary for the MIS director is sad. There's no senior level person who's going to take this job.
Yeah.
And it's not just the salary, it's the fact that there's no staff. I mean, who in the world is going to take this job knowing that they can't take vacation and that they're going to be working overtime every night and every weekend? It's again, I'm going to stop.
Okay, so again, I don't think we can do anything more tonight besides what we just decided, which is invite MTC and Mark to the next meeting, and then ask them to keep us posted. I hope we don't get something goes wrong in between. Okay, moving on. Okay, so now we're into the meat of the fiscal year 22 budget discussion. So all the budgets are not submitted yet, so they're a little bit behind. It's in pretty good shape, though. They're almost there. So there's a few stragglers that are expected to come in the next couple of days. So what I am proposing to do as far as calendar goes, which is different than, a little bit different than last meeting, is to use next week to basically look at the budget. We should have it all together, see what it looks like with just what people have submitted. So we kind of know what our starting point is, which should inform our discussions going forward, know how bad it looks, how good it looks, how in between it looks. So I will get that all together. Has everybody logged into ClearGov and know how it works, or is that not true?
Kathy, I have not.
All right. So your homework is to log in. So you can at least just look at it. I'll have it. We're going to dump this down into an Excel spreadsheet so we can work with it and manipulate it. So I will have it in an Excel spreadsheet also. Next week.
Kathy, when I logged in, I saw I had access to pretty much no data.
When's the last time you logged in?
Today.
Really?
And there was absolutely nothing for me to look at in the budget section.
Me as well. The only way I was able to get to it is by downloading a report in the
I need to
background.
go through Brian based on my experience with Capital. Brian owns all the user, like how much you can see or not see, and what items you can see.
I can see it. So maybe he just hasn't done what he's got to do as far as making everybody else a user, raise the level that you can see things. So I will talk to him tomorrow and get that taken care of. So I sent everybody this afternoon a draft letter to the departments as far as letting them know what advisory tends to do as far as the budget process goes. Everything, of course, will be Zoom. So did everybody have a chance to actually look at that? It was pretty brief.
Yes.
So what I would like to do is get that finalized tonight so I can get it out tomorrow. Go ahead, Andrew.
I think it looks good. I had a question about in the third paragraph, we have a list of what the information that we're going to be asking for. And one is, I think we did talk about this and agree on it, but I just had a question. Description of the individual roles that each department employee has. You know, is that like a list of every employee who works in the department and what they do? Because for some departments, that might be quite a long list, particularly police, fire, DPW.
Well, I'm hoping the ones that have a lot of employees already have a list and all they gotta do is attach it and say here.
Okay. You just want like name and job description, basically.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
All right.
Kathy, so I guess I had a similar question to Andrew, but just on that general paragraph. So you're expecting by like whenever this first department comes in 3 weeks, that they're going to type out a memo with these 7 items that I know we've talked about, right? And I think there's general consensus around, or are they going to verbally speak to it in the meeting?
The former and the latter. So, and they've always done a narrative. They just we haven't been as exact as what we wanted. We just said do a narrative, right? So this time I'm saying this is what we want in your narrative. I would like to see 7 different paragraphs that basically go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So Andrew or Jason, both written and then expand on it when we see them.
So maybe I'm the minority, but I think them just hitting on all these topics in a format that they think is appropriate in our verbal discussion is enough. I think having them go up, this is a lot of work to ask someone to do in 3 weeks when they've got other departments, you've got holidays in there. If we were sending this July 1st, I wouldn't necessarily care, but I think this is a lot of work if someone does it the right way, like what we're expecting. I would just like these highlights to come out when they're talking to us. Because, I mean, I'll be honest, I've talked to both the departments that I'm the liaison for already, walked through all these items and basically prepared the 2 chiefs for what they need to be ready to answer. And it's very much in line with this, but to go ask them to write now a memo, as opposed to just speaking to the 7 of us when they come, I just think is a bit much.
Well, if we ask them to just do it verbally, they're going to still have to be prepared to do it. And what better way to prepare it than to put it on a piece of paper? I mean, we've always asked for narratives, written narratives, so that's nothing new.
And some of these narratives are just one page,
Yeah, I
bullet
mean,
point
I agree.
formats.
I mean, description services, that's not heavy lifting.
I mean,
Individual roles,
description
that's
of
not heavy
services, they can go out to the webpage and click on their department.
I guess what I was saying is more like a slide format as opposed to, because I mean, a description of services, we should all know what most of these departments do.
I can
we
just,
do, but it still doesn't hurt to reiterate it. So we think we do, but you get surprised sometimes. So I'd still like them to reiterate exactly what they do. So we've got it. I don't think that hurts. Some people know more than others do, so I still think that doesn't hurt. I don't think there's any heavy lifting on here other than a couple things, which is to think about what they might want to do if they had more money, on what their wish list is, and then what they could do to make their department more efficient. Those things are hard. So we may not get much back from some people in those. So I agree that it's not; those are hard. Period. To do. So I still would like to see it in writing.
But to your point, Jason, if it's a slide format versus a memo format,
I mean, if they want to do a memo, I'm just thinking about if I'm the department that's coming closer to the holidays versus I'm the department that gets slotted on December 3rd, that's a very different situation. So I think we would also need to then think about which departments come first, right? The departments with less employees, et cetera. So if we're going to give the departments with 25 employees more time, I think that's okay, because I think the way we've written to Andrew's question about the employees, if I read that as a department head, I'd go up and write what each patrolman, what their responsibilities are, which each firefighter, what their responsibilities are, other than the obvious of responding to emergency calls. They have that in various forms, but is that what you're looking for? Like in my two instances.
I mean, I don't think, Kathy, that we need to know each patrolman, which district, but like a patrolman versus the court officer versus the detective, and like basically what Chief Paulus has in his salary spreadsheet.
Yeah, so I think we should just make that clear then.
Okay.
So I'm happy to clarify. All I'm looking for is patrolman, firefighter. I'm trying to get enough information so that when we do what we tried to do last year, which is determine whether there were some jobs that could be shared, combined, etc., we've got a little bit better idea of what people do. So I'm talking about people that there's many employees that I don't think we could go through them and know and say this is exactly what they do. So I'm trying to clarify what people do so we can understand that. We're going to end up with new positions being requested this year. And therefore, if we want to keep the head count at a net zero, we're going to have to think about what other things we can do to achieve that. So I still think having them describe what someone's doing, and I really do want to understand what they're doing in COVID too, which is part of this.
Is that a fact, or is that
what I just said? What I just said?
Yeah.
It's a fact.
So what department?
Let me back up. It's a fact that there are going to be requests for more people. If that's what you're asking is a fact. Yes, that's a fact.
Okay. But we don't know a specific department yet.
Yeah, we do.
You willing to share?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you in a second. Let me keep going. Okay, so yes, I am about to tell you who it is. And that's just one. One that we thought we were going to get asked is going to defer. Okay, so it sounds like maybe if I'm listening to everybody that the majority of the committee is okay with asking for the narrative as long as I clarify at least what we're asking for as far as description of what each person does and make sure they understand we're not talking about what a patrolman does specifically. We're talking about whether you are a patrolman.
But I'm okay, especially if the liaison then takes this and says, okay, department head, this is really what we're looking for, and make it specific to their department.
I mean, the liaison can help write this too, if you
want
to, as far as helping your department come up with this. But I really think we've got to talk about COVID. And you're not going to get that as looking at a budget. You can't tell from the budget whether what you've got in there as far as COVID, how it's going to change the next year, what it is. So we've got to at least understand that piece of it. So I still am fairly adamant that we need to ask them to do this. And we're going to talk about the timing in a second as far as who goes first. And we can certainly do that based on who we think will have an easier time at this.
And I think it certainly matters on what the position is. I mean, if you put patrolmen or firemen, we got a general idea what they do on a day in, day out basis, but you know, administrative assistant or something, you don't know what functionalities they do or what, you know, what they're supporting, you know, that kind of thing. So if it's a generic kind of job description, we might not know that piece.
Well, that's the kind of position that I'm really aiming for, Andrew, trying to understand more as to what they're doing. So that's a perfect example of one that I'm really trying to get more info as far as what they do. You know, one of the big discussions last year was whether we could take someone that was already on the payroll and move them over to Youth and Family Services. We thought there was someone on the committee that thought that that should work fine. Youth and Family Services was clearly opposed to that. And thought that we didn't really understand what they do there. So I'm just trying to get this out now so we really have something to work with when we really decide, well, if we're going to hire, if this person's going to be added, then what else could we do to maybe offset that so we don't have a net addition, which is what the Board of Selectmen agreed to last year. It doesn't mean they have to stick with it. But part of the decision last year to hire the people we did was that next year, this year, we weren't going to add any new headcount. So Jason is the Board of Health. Okay, so do we stick with this? Do we change this? What do you want to do?
I think it looks good. I think, you know, we need to get it out.
Yeah.
And looks good. You know, one other suggestion is you say, please send the narrative directly to you, but it should also really go to the liaison too, right?
All right, so I can change that. I was going to post it on, we're going to talk in a minute about where we're going to start posting documents. I was just going to post it there. So I will add the liaison on there too.
Yep. I would just say, Kathy, too, I would set it to all departments, department chairs, right? Or department heads.
Yeah.
I don't think it needs to go to every member of.
Okay, so I added heads and I added liaisons.
Okay, this is somewhat related to the letter, but we should, I know there's an attachment section in ClearGov, which is where like they uploaded all their support. We should either make sure we have access to that because so that these department heads don't have to duplicate anything, or get copies of everything that's in there somehow to whatever site you're going to do.
Okay, so I'm not sure what you're saying there. Yes, they can absolutely upload things that are attachments. You see a little paper clip and you'll see what they've attached. So they could upload their narrative right there, then we've got it. Or they could do what I suggested, which is just email it to liaison and to me. So what are you saying, Jason? Do you want?
I'm just, no. So I'm not, I agree with where they should be emailing it to, you and the liaison. I guess what I'm saying is we should get a copy of whatever is already in there. Like whatever they already submitted, like as a starting point for purposes of working through that. I just don't know how to get a copy of it. I don't think it's as easy, like, I don't think you can download the paperclip unless Brian gives us the right access.
I think we should be able to.
I looked at paper clips today.
Okay.
Okay, but
So as long
I understand what you're saying. So I will make
Okay.
sure that we don't duplicate. And we're trying really hard not to duplicate what they've already done because they have spent a lot of time trying to do it. Okay. So everybody agrees that this is going to go out tomorrow?
Yes.
Okay.
Will you copy us?
Yes, they will.
Thank you.
All right. So next item is discussion of, and let me just clarify something. From this point on, we're not going to call the Capital Planning Committee CPC because it's confusing with CPC, and CPC was here first. So from this point on, the Capital Planning Committee is going to be called Capital Planning, and no more using the abbreviation so we don't confuse people. So I had already done this agenda when we decided to change that at our last meeting. So Jason, do you want to take over and explain to everybody where we are with the Capital Planning Committee work, and then what we've got available for everybody to look at right now?
And you want me to leave the schools to the next agenda item, right? Okay. So we have made a presentation at this point to the Board of Selectmen of all the items we anticipate would go forward at the 2021 annual town meeting. Capital Planning has voted unanimously on all of the items. Board of Selectmen raised no objections to the items that were presented. I would say the only caveat that was put out there is if the financial picture becomes so bleak that we cannot afford the volume that we have currently presented, that they may want to come back to the table on those. But in concept, everyone agrees with the items that are being brought forward, the dollar amounts, in most cases, the method of how we're going to actually pay for them too. And the way we presented it now is actually all items that would come through the general fund are actually not being bonded as currently presented. So we do have a lever that could exist down the road to spread the payments. The other thing that Andrew has spoken a lot about is leasing and whether that becomes a viable option. But there's also a careful balance that would have to take place there in terms of making sure we don't solve this year's problem and create an issue 2 or 3 years down the road as well. So there's good consensus around it. There's a presentation that we will upload that's already been made. I don't think it needs to be altered in any way, shape, or form for the prior conversations. And I think what at least I would like to hear is how much detail that the members of advisory that aren't on capital planning want to hear about it. Or if you want to go off and watch the presentation of BOS and come back with specific questions, just to make best use of everyone's time.
So to be clear, 3 out of the 7 of us are on this committee. Doesn't mean we think the other 4 should rubber stamp this. Actually, I think just the opposite. You can ask for as much detail, discuss as much as you want to any item. We will certainly talk about how to pay for those items as part of what we do. And Jason said that we unanimously supported that, but it's a pretty big caveat as long as we can, it works as far as the budget goes. And I will say there's one I want you to pay particular attention to. There's one in there that I'm actually still not sold on, although I did vote for it, which is for the first time, we've got a sidewalk maintenance fund being set up with $200,000 going into it. So pay particular attention to that one. I think we will spend some time talking about that one. So the plan this year is a little bit different. Rather than truly spending a lot of time on each one like we normally do, basically let the 4 of you that aren't on it decide how much you want to talk about any particular item. And we'll talk as much as you want to, but if you're satisfied with the work of the capital planning committee, we'll go on from there.
Hey, Jason, did you say that it's already, a presentation is already prepared and hasn't changed much?
Yeah, so there's slides that are already prepared, and there's probably about an hour and a half to 2 hours of video presentation by our committee to BOS, and you can obviously hear the dialogue that ensued that's already there.
Yeah, I would just like to take a look at that because as a result of that, it's certainly going to reduce down any inquiries I may have. So Kathy, in terms of a procedure, if we could look at that and then come back with, to the extent anyone has questions relative to specific items. But I do think that given the fact that that work has already been done, essentially that has been our work in the past. So it could be a relatively quick process moving forward, at least if we do it that way.
Which is going to help our process a lot too. So it really is a jumpstart on the whole thing. It's a huge jumpstart. But again, this is not to tell the 4 of you who aren't on the committee that you shouldn't look at it. You look at it as much as you want to.
As someone that's not
Okay.
on capital, I agree.
All right, related.
Andrew's talking, but I can't hear what he's saying.
Here, try this. I said, as someone that's not on capital, I agree with what John said. And so it would be helpful if you have like a slide deck or even just a 1-page or something that summarizes the presentation. And then we can look at it. I know I can look at it and then see how much it's necessary to go and watch the entire video of the presentation to the BOS.
There is a really, really good slide deck that Jason put together that I think you'll be very impressed with. So we're going to upload that and other things that go with it.
Okay, good.
All right.
In big picture though, right, here's the takeaway. it's twice as much capital as we appropriated last year in terms of impact to general fund, but about 25% of it is just holdovers from the 2020 town meeting that just weren't ready given the limited time that everyone knew they were going to have to get through that those special circumstances.
So if you average the 2 years, you get to a much more reasonable number than looking at fiscal year 22 in a vacuum
There was some stuff that was held for the fall town meeting, which we never had.
that we never had.
Agreed.
Couldn't pass it, could we? All right, so related, the next item is going to be on here as a standing item every time in case there's something to talk about. But as everyone I think knows, the Capital Planning Committee also has a subcommittee that Jason and I are on, along with Katura Martin of the school committee, and then the superintendent and Keith LeBoy, who you guys may know, used to be the principal troutier. He and Greg Martineau are ex officio members of that committee. So there's 5 of us. And the purpose of that committee is to try to determine whether we've got the ability to go from 4 K-8 schools to 3, whether we should do it. So that process is well underway. We have hired a group at NASDAQ to perform a demographic study that projects the student population for the next 10 years in Southborough as kind of our starting point here. We expect that report no later than the middle of January, hopefully a little bit earlier. So we've got other things going on at the same time, but that's kind of the linchpin to going forward is to get that report. When this was done in 2013, we did not hire NASDAQ to actually basically take the normal statistics they have for Southborough and then customize them based on things that are applicable to Southborough. So this time they will look at Park Central. They'll look at other things that affect Southborough. So we'll see what they come up with. The group's pretty impressive. So we're looking forward to seeing what they come up with. So that's kind of where that stands. But we'll report back on that every meeting if there's anything to update you with. So John, that's this is the committee that is like the one we were on in 2013.
Right.
But John, what I didn't realize until recently is that when we did it in 2013, we didn't ask NASDAQ to actually go any further than what they supply to all school districts in Massachusetts. We just used their raw numbers.
Right.
We didn't ask them to come in and really take a look at Southborough. So the numbers that we have today in the school population are actually quite different than what was projected. So we'll see what they come up with.
Different in terms of increase or decrease of students.
Increase.
Yeah, the enrollment is pretty flat, but NASDAQ had projected when you did the prior analysis that it was going to decrease far more sharply than it actually did. It's about 150-ish students off over a 10-year time period.
Out of how many, Jason?
About 1,200.
Yeah, so 10%. And if you remember, NASDAQ's numbers were supposed to, on the average, be off about 1% a year at the most. And of course, that gets you, I guess, 7 or 8%. The gentleman we're dealing with at NASDAQ has said we have to be careful because of COVID's impact. COVID has caused some parents to decide to hold their kindergarten children age out for an extra year. We just started the next year. So that has caused the kindergarten class to be really small for this year compared to what
it's about 20 students, just for put numbers to it, that were enrolled and then backed out.
So that's all I was going to say about that one. Unless Jason's got
So
anything else to add.
that's essentially a classroom, right, Jason?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So John, did you know that Northborough actually sends their pre-K to Finn?
I did not know that. Did you know that before recently finding that out?
Nope, found out as part of this process. Because we've got so much room at Finn that they do not have room in Northborough.
Kathy, the only thing I would add is I think at our last subcommittee meeting, we all agreed, including the superintendent and Keith, that the decision is clearly not going to just be based on enrollment. There's going to be other factors, both hard numbers and probably more educational policy type items that are going to factor in. And there's other work streams going on. But on the capital planning side, so the full committee, one of the other things that we're undertaking is how valuable would one of these schools, and it's down to Neary or Woodward, actually be to the town? Because there may be a situation where the enrollment maybe doesn't perfectly say shut down a school, but there may be, when you actually start putting all the items together of what the town's needs are in terms of the senior center, library, recreation, basically every department probably in some way, shape, or form. When you start aggregating it up, is there a grand plan that you can actually come up with? But it would really be contingent upon either of those buildings working. I think everyone probably has some views, but I think what we are now going to start to work through with an architect is for very, very short money, under $2,000, is how much could actually fit, and like how many departments could you take in, right? Could you just take 2 departments and that would fill a school? I think we know that's not the case, but like how much could you actually fit based on how these schools are laid out without completely gutting and starting from scratch? Because that would be just not something I think that would be financially viable. But just to have an informed decision of, hey, if the school were actually to offer something, what could the town actually do? Because we think it's kind of a joint decision at that point.
Hey,
And
Kathy, can you, obviously it's not subject for discussion tonight, but can you in 2 sentences or less tell me how or why we have Northborough children in the Southborough school system?
I don't know the background, but it sounds like Northborough needed room and called Southborough and said, do you have room? So, I mean, they bus them over here every day, and they're whole prepaid. And they pay rent. I mean, they're paying us for this. We get rent to be able to, it's their teachers, not our teachers. So they basically just use the space at Penn.
Okay,
So it is amazing what you don't know until you start doing
thank you.
this, you know. So, and not to belabor this, John, you may also recall that when we did the study in 2013, we didn't focus on what we would do with a mothballed school.
Right,
The impetus for that study was there was a lot of grousing from people in town about the fact that it looked like the school population was going to go down a lot. And so therefore we should look at this, but it wasn't because we thought the town needed a building. This time it's just the opposite. The impetus for doing this is because we think the town might have good use for a spare building. And so that's kind of started the process. And this time the school committee is on board with this. Roger Challen is absolutely on board with this. So it's been a very constructive process so far.
Hey, Jason, on the capital planning committee, does it have any discussion about the number of town-owned buildings and their current use and a proposed future use?
The proposed future use is going to be answered by where the school thing lands.
Okay,
Right. So I'll just give the easiest example, John, right? So one of the things that capital planning voted on was to defer the renovations to Corderville Hall for the senior center. Not because no one thought they were needed, but 1, there's no contractor available to do it in the next fiscal year. And 2, we actually think we may potentially have a much better space at a fraction of the cost to accomplish maybe what they needed and more.
okay,
So that's the future. I think we'll know in the next 6 to 12 months of what general direction the town is headed. But Kathy, that does bring up the point that we should just make everyone aware that there was topics about South Union School, and that's now an executive session between capital planning and the Board of Selectmen in terms of what they may or may not decide to do with that.
Why would that be an executive session?
Because it deals with the sale of real estate. So it goes to the strategy.
Okay.
And one more thing, we're almost done. This is going to be a short meeting tonight. I think Jason and I both think the same thing, and we're trying to make sure we stay open-minded. I think that we think the better answer might be to close Woodward as a school and keep Neary open and spend some money on Neary, make it, you know, it's got to have some money spent on it if it's going to last another 30 years, right? But we are trying, we're not going to, we're going to look at both ways to do this. We know we can't close Trotter. We know we can't close Finn for different reasons. We know that we could put a grade in Finn if we thought that was the right thing to do. It looks like the superintendent doesn't think we should add a grade to Trotter, even though, John, last time we did have that as one of the choices, is to put 5th grade with Trotter. I don't think that Greg Martineau thinks that is appropriate or we should do it. So we'll see. But we are trying to be open-minded and not necessarily just focus on what we think might be the better answer. But it's exciting. All right, anything else on that one? All righty. I want to go to any other matters properly brought forth before I go back to the calendar. So there's a couple things under that topic. So the first one is what I referred to earlier. So I talked to Tom LaFlamme this afternoon about what the best place would be for advisory to put their documents. I started talking to him about this last year, but never did much with it. To talk about history a little bit, advisory used to have their own site on Shutterfly where we posted everything. We even copied all of our emails to that. So that was kind of our own thing. And that's where we kept it. Later versions of advisory didn't like that, so we gave that up, closed it. So we no longer have a space just for our advisory documents. So Tom recommended doing one or two things. There's a place we could put the stuff on the town website if we wanted to, all the documents. It'd be just for advisory. We would have logins to it as far as the piece that we wouldn't want the public to have access to, the stuff that should have access to it, and then the town could see everything else. But the better answer appears to be to use one of the components of Office 365. So the town email, of course, is now in Office 365, and OneDrive is the Microsoft version of the cloud. So we've got OneDrive as part of our subscription to Office 365. So Tom says if it were he, that's what he would use. To do that, none of us have access to OneDrive because we're not an employee. So Brian Ballantyne will basically be the employee that links us up to it. So you'll get an email sometime in the near future, hopefully tomorrow, that basically tells you how to, it's going to have a link and it's going to link you to the actual folder on OneDrive where our documents are going to be. So anyone will have the ability to write to that folder, to deposit something into that folder. But that will be the repository for all of the documents that we need for this budget year, et cetera. Any of the more technical people on this committee have any problem with that?
We use it now for Capcom, and it works fine.
Okay.
If anybody's used Dropbox or SharePoint, it's very simple.
Great.
It's the same thing? That's what you're saying?
Yeah.
It's similar concept, yeah.
But the town's got the subscription here, so there's no cost for this. We don't have to add anything to it. The subcommittee, the school research subcommittee is using Google Docs because that's what the school uses to put our documents on, but we don't use Google Docs on the town side. So this seems to be a good way to do it. So watch your email. You'll get an email that basically tells you what the link is to get to the folder. And by the time you see it, there should be some documents in it for you to actually see. All right. So we're talking about the budget, but don't forget, we've got other articles to start considering. We had talked last year about possibly proposing a change to the advisory bylaw, the town code, which is under section 9, to reduce the amount of people on the committee from 9 to 7. So I just want everybody to start thinking about that. We'll talk about it again at a future meeting. We'll have to talk about it with the Board of Selectmen to see what they think. We want them to hopefully to support whatever we come up with. But as you know, we've had 7 for a long time. 9 is a big committee for Southborough. It's hard to do with qualified people. So we'll continue to talk about it, but I do want you to start thinking about that again because we're going to have to get that going pretty quickly if we're going to support that and ask for the BOS to sponsor the warrant article.
And Kathy, would be adding to that the committee membership?
Yes. So the second part of that is, as you know, and I don't know the background for this, the advisory bylaw says that advisory members can be on ad hoc committees. They can be on one ad hoc committee, but they cannot be on another permanent committee, a permanent standing committee. Marty Healy brought this up at the meeting that we had with capital planning. And clearly Marty wants the capital planning committee, which is right now an ad hoc committee, to be a permanent committee. They're very excited about the work that's been done. And so no one knows why the advisory bylaw is written the way it is. We don't know what the background was. No one, it's been there for a long time. So we don't know what the impetus was to only allow advisory members to be on ad hoc committees, maybe because they're temporary and short term, and you didn't want advisory to be stretched too thin. So I don't know what the reason could be. No one really thought it was necessarily a good reason. So the question is, do we want to think about also at the same time proposing a change where advisory committee members, with the approval of advisory, can be on another permanent committee? Keeping in mind that I do think they'll make capital planning permanent, and therefore if they do, then the 3 people on it will have to get off if they don't make the change. So I will say there will be a impact of that.
I agree, Kathy. It is something that's worth looking into.
Yeah, I just can't think of any reason for the restriction. And again, I could certainly be wrong, but I think to try to understand the reason for the restriction first would help me be able to make that distinction. But apparently, Kathy, at least based upon what you've done, we don't have an answer to that.
Well, Marty Healy, John, was on advisory long before I was. And so now we're going back, I guess, almost 30 years. I can call John Butler and ask if he remembers why it's the way it is and see if he's got any recollection. But I mean, if Marty doesn't remember, it's going to go back a long time.
I think there's also a part in there, right, that you don't vote on items that relate to, like, for example, like when this committee votes on capital, it's highly likely that Kathy, you, Andrew, and myself should abstain from that vote.
Correct.
So I think that's another way to work around the independence aspect of this.
Well, for that part, I'm not sure about that. Then that
I'm
poses
not sure that
some
makes
quorum
sense. That's what it
issues.
says. Yeah, I'm not sure it makes sense, but that's what it says.
Yeah,
Now we'll have to do that because
that's why it's there, I think, is, what we'll probably learn. But I think, yeah, talking to John Butler seems like the best next step there, because I think then that will help inform where people want to go with this. At least if we understand why it was there in the first place.
I'll talk to Al Hamilton too and see if he
One thing, because I've looked into before, if you look at the town code, you might find in really small print underneath that, it'll explain at what town meeting that was passed. And then you could go then look at the minutes of that town meeting. That might clue you into when the heck did this requirement come into place. So I'm not volunteering to do that research, but I will
make it my job to try to figure out why it's there. What happened along the way?
It's in the basement of the library where there are the old.
There's probably a good story.
Volumes of these minutes.
Very good story. All right, so that is 2 things to consider as far as a warrant article to change the advisory bylaw. All right, so back to calendar. So our next.
Can I bring up I have another. Sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jason.
Sorry, Jason. Sorry.
I was just going to say on other matter, just an update on the letter that the committee authorized me to send to BOS and Personnel Board. Personnel Board is planning to take it up at their December meeting. So I talked to Betsy, and she's understands the background and is willing to bring it to her committee for discussion. BOS, I kind of wanted to get the appetite of this committee, how hard you want me to push. It seems that it's kind of, I was told they'll talk about it at some point by Marty. but that they're waiting on a lot of data. And I said, well, I have all the data that informed kind of the letter. So personally, I'm probably going to push pretty hard, but if advisory wants to take a stronger stance on that, I mean, it impacts budgets, it impacts policy, and it impacts stuff, I know that has already happened. So I just wanted to raise that that's where we are about 3 weeks post sending of the letter.
Jason, have you had a conversation with Marty Healy about the letter?
I had 2 emails and offered a call, and he doesn't seem, I don't want to paraphrase, but doesn't seem to be interested in adding it to an agenda outside of members report at this point. It was discussed in a members report, I think, a couple of weeks ago.
Well, they've got a lot going on, right? But I agree with you that we should continue to push this. It'd be interesting, maybe wait and see what personnel does in December.
But I think it's 2 different things, though, because personnel just can deal with the SAP. BOS has to deal with the department head issue and the union issue.
But if the BOS knew that personnel felt strongly one way or another, it might influence what they think also.
In large part, it's involved in the negotiation of the contracts, correct? So I'm not sure what Personnel Board has beyond just a quick answer on the SAP, but aren't we really focused on those 4 contracts?
That was, yeah. I mean, I think it's 2 very different conversations. Like, I think they're mutual. They may meet in the middle at some point, but I think, yeah, you've got to deal with the contracts in one discussion, which is BOS, which has the authority. And then SAP is really how much should you allow employees to actually carry on the books at any one time,
Jason,
or be allowed to carry over.
I'm sorry, Jason, go ahead.
I'm done.
Okay. Do either of you know the date of the contract expirations that we're dealing with?
Town administrator, I think, is within the next year.
It is, it's October, his contract is up October of 21.
Police chief just renewed. Fire chief is a year and a half in to a 3-year contract. And then all union contracts are open 18 months from now.
Thank you.
And in fairness to Marty, it may be that, because I kind of think this too, I've always, I don't know what influence Southborough is going to have as far as a union contract. And because I've been told this, I've been schooled in this, Southborough is not going to drive what goes into a union contract, Little Southborough. So therefore, believing that we can force a change or encourage a change on something that would be different than what most contracts would have. Maybe, I don't want to say naive, but maybe it is a little naive. But so I, Jason, why don't you just keep it, let's keep talking about it. Let's see where it goes.
Okay, so no one's offended if I kind of send another email to Marty saying would really like to see a discussion of this in the agenda. Because remember,
You just
we have
say,
an account-
don't just, and I think you're going to say advisory would like,
Yeah.
we really feel pretty strongly about this.
well, because remember, there's an accounting issue too of is our accrued vacation balance correct? Which that could be at any point in time, any employee leaves. We know we have employees leaving. Are they paying out the appropriate amount?
And Jason, we're still in COVID, so is it the same vacation policy that we've had? That was the issue last fiscal year?
The only thing I'm aware of that they did with COVID was how to deal with sick time to tie into the federal government. Like there's 14 days or something the federal government gives you if you have to quarantine or something along those lines.
Okay, I thought there was a fire or police mandate, no vacation or something.
Sorry, if that's your question,
Yeah.
that mandate ended in May of 2020. It was only April and May of 2020, and it was fire only.
Gotcha.
And Kathy, I had two quick things on other business, and they're really not other business. It's just my failure to bring it up as we were talking about it. But Jason, you mentioned that with regards to the 900,000 potential availability, the deadline is ticking. What do you understand the deadline to be?
CARES Act funding ends on 12/31/2020 without any sort of action by Congress.
And is there an opportunity to the extent that we needed to file any sort of a supplemental request? Because I mean, if there's not, and the work has already been done, I'm not sure what, underlying value there is other than, well, I guess my question is there an opportunity to file a supplemental request if we find one could be filed?
I don't know the answer to that. Does anyone else?
I don't know the answer, but there's two processes, right? There's FEMA and there's CARES.
So Jason, is the 900 the combination of the two, or is it just CARES?
FEMA doesn't have a limit. FEMA just has
So
a
that's-
green.
The 900 is the most Southborough could get under the CARES Act.
Correct, right? So the federal government allocated money to the state, and then the state did some math of how they were going to allocate it to the communities.
Okay, so I'm going to do some more work on that and report back to you as far as.
And my other question was, Jason, it sounds like you have already liaised with your department heads on their budget. I thought we were going to, and it's not necessarily an individual thing, but we were going to wait until we got their budget and then go over the budget and justifications for that. But am I the only one who might be behind in meeting with our individual department heads?
No, I think you're in the same group with everybody but Jason.
I would say the chiefs proactively sent it to me when I told them that I was going to be their liaison for the year. I basically said, I'm your liaison. And about 2 hours later, I had 2 budgets in my inbox, to be completely honest.
Okay. I just didn't want to bring up the rear.
You're not in the rear, you are in the crowd. Okay, so let's talk about order. So I'm proposing we start on December the 2nd, and I'm proposing we add a meeting. So we meet December 2nd, 9th, and 16th, all Wednesday nights at 6:30. So let's try to set the order we want to see people, knowing what we know about size of departments, what they need, et cetera.
Suggest possibly for MIS that whatever meeting Tom can come to, we let him choose, since it's after his end date.
So Tim, you said you want Tom to come?
Even if it's, I mean, it'll be virtual, yes. But seeing as how it's after his end date, I think we should let him choose.
I don't think he's even done his budget. Let me go back and look at this.
He has. I went through it with him.
Oh, okay, all right. So you would want him to come back virtually to talk about that budget?
Yes, even if we have a new resource, I think.
Then I'd say the sooner the better for him, because that's the next week. So let's get him done so that,
Yes, I agree.
okay, so MIS on 12/2?
Well, why wouldn't you bring him in? Why wouldn't you bring him in next meeting? I know it's ahead of when you were looking to do it, but if he already has it done, he's walked him through it. In fairness to him, he's not getting paid by the town of Southborough after whatever that date is. He's leaving in November.
Tim?
It's fine. It's not a big budget.
All right, so you want to talk to Tom and invite him to the meeting on next Wednesday?
Sure.
Okay, good idea, Jason. All right, so we'll get him out of the way, so that's good. That'll a little bit. Jump
So
start.
I have the EDC, which should be a relatively smaller budget. So I haven't spoken to them yet, but I can try to slot it. I can ask
12/2.
12/2.
Anybody else have a date they want to have their departments on of the 3 dates here?
I would just say police and fire are ready, but that's a big discussion.
So Jason, why don't you pick one of the 2 later dates, 9th or 16th for both of them?
I'll choose the 9th and
Haven't heard back from DPW yet, so probably later or this.
So let's put DPW on the 16th, Andrew.
Sounds good.
Okay. And Judy's not here. I actually got an email from her. She said she couldn't come, so we're not watching for her. So Youth and Family Services can do 12/2. Let's put library with DPW on the 16th. So we don't, so the one that is asking for a big increase is Board of Health, so we're going to have to talk to Board of Health. So we need to assign a liaison to Board of Health. They actually want to add a whole new person. So anybody interested in Board of Health? If not, I'll do it.
I can talk to them if you don't want to, Kathy. I'm indifferent.
Jason, the reason I'm saying let me do it, I'm already talking to Paul about the septic
Perfect.
stuff, so I'll do Board of Health. Okay. So I'm going to add Board of Health on to the 16th also.
Can we include in the Board of Health that thing that John Butler wanted for the garbage trucks?
And they're talking, so Paul, they're very interested in doing that as far as licensing the trash haulers. So that's underway, that discussion. So yes, we can include that discussion when they come to do.
I think they're moving forward with it. Hopefully done.
All righty. So that's a pretty full plate for those 3 meetings. I've got then let's talk about January. So I think we've got to plan on meeting every Wednesday in January for now. So we'll have the first 2 Wednesdays in January to hopefully finish up talking to the departments that we're going to talk to. And then have a few weeks to start talking about the warrant articles. You know, a lot's going to come back that didn't get, so we're probably going to have a lot of warrant articles this time. I would think we're going to have the leftover ones and plus new ones.
Do you have any sense of whether we're actually going to have a town meeting at which to discuss the warrant articles, though?
I know no more than you do, but if I had to bet, I'd say it's going to be postponed.
Oh, that
You said it'd
reminds
be
me.
a close call.
Well, we're not going to have it outside in March, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, 2,000 people died in the country today. Another 140,000 cases. Massachusetts is up to 2.9% as far as their testing rate. So I don't think we're going to have it in March, but that's just me. No one has said that at all. That's just what I would bet.
Kathy, that reminds me. I think you have the wrong date of town meeting in your letter. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that earlier. I think it's
Well, I
the 20th.
looked. So what do you think? It's the 26th, right?
No,
Well, it's the last Saturday in March, correct?
nope. Because I think that was
Letter says the 27th.
Didn't they move it to the 20th because
The
the 20th
20th. I
Passover?
believe it was Passover. Yeah, it's definitely the 20th. Because I'll only pull up the BOS agenda. They
Okay,
already.
so if the 27th is Passover, I agree, but it's normally the last.
It was supposed to be the 27th, but I think they moved it.
All right,
Agreed.
well, I'm glad you guys looked at that. So I will switch. This has not gone out, so I looked at it and I thought it didn't sound right, but it said it's the last Saturday.
Yeah,
So it's-
Sam's confirming in the chat 3:20.
Thank you, Sam. All righty. Okay, so I will leave it to each liaison to continue talking to your departments. Next week, we'll have the overall budget, a first peek of it. We'll have it downloaded to Excel so we can start playing around with it. Understand what the effect on the tax rate is, et cetera.
Kathy, are we supposed to, for the departments we just agreed to, are you communicating the date or are we supposed to go back to the departments we're the liaison for?
I want the liaison to communicate the date.
Okay.
Okay, and I will add that to my, so the memo that's going on tomorrow is going to have the liaisons listed attached to it, so they'll know who the liaison is. And I'll add a sentence and say the liaison will contact you shortly as far as the date we'd like to see you on the Zoom.
And does Andrew D know when schools is going to be ready? Because that's obviously
No, I don't.
75%.
I'm sure
I
they're
mean,
not.
it's going to be towards the end, right?
Oh, yeah.
Is it okay if it's in January?
It won't be January, I don't think. I think it's going to be. So, yeah, if it's January, that'd be great. That'd be great. Even in a non-COVID year, January is pretty early for them.
Okay, I mean,
You think about
Basically,
how
I-
they've got going on right now, my gosh, so I don't know when they, but you should go ahead and talk to them, and
Okay.
see what they say, but they've got so much going on. So Wellesley went totally remote today. Fitchburg said they're not even coming back as, they're not going to do their hybrid at all, so more and more, I think we're going to see things get worse before they get better, and then hopefully they'll get better. Okay. All right, everybody's okay with the dates. I'll get the calendar all set up so you'll get a bunch of invites all at one time for January, and then I'll add the December 9th meeting. That's not scheduled right now. All right, anything else before we get to public comment? All right, any public comment? So I see none. So motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote. Cook, aye. Dennington,
Aye.
Malinowski,
Aye.
Martell,
Aye.
Pfaff,
Aye.
Mr. Rooney.
Aye, sorry.
Okay, see everybody next Wednesday, 6 days. So John, it's 7:59. Note that, please.
Excellent. Excellent job, Kevin.
See everybody next week. Thank you.